Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber, affiliated with Gruber Motor Company. I see the image up there, yes. Today, Zane is working on a video, my normal co-host, so Bob is filling in for him. He's my co-pilot today, and he wants to show off the picture, autograph picture he got of Jim Carrey. So for those of you that like Jim Carrey movies and Jim Carrey period, we actually have an autographed picture of him. The picture behind me is an infrared shot taken in Merano, Italy. Merano is in northern Italy. It's in the Alps. Used to be part of Austria. You know how these countries in Europe tend to trade land areas back and forth depending on who won a war or something. Well, if you do your history or look it up in history, there was a legitimate reason for this chunk of beautiful countryside eventually going to Italy. And I think it was after the Second World War. But anyway, beautiful area to visit. And what I did here was a infrared shot, which really accentuates some of the contrasting highlights in the image. It's very mountainous. It's in the Alps. There's a valley down below. And when we go there, we typically stay at a resort that's on the mountainside there in the Alps. It looks like we've got some people chiming in now from YouTube. Darren N., good morning. Good morning, Darren. And from TikTok, Bill Wood, this was from the last podcast, asked a question or made a statement. He said, I can't wait for induction charging in the roads. Well, we feel that way as well, because this silliness of taking gigantic, heavy, thick cables and plugging them in a car and attempting to reduce the charging time is going to get out of hand. I mean, eventually we're going to have cables the size of logs, and you'll have to have hydraulics to plug them into the cables. So really the only sensible thing to do is to get a inductive where a process where that energy is transferred through the airwaves, just like radio and television, for example, except much, much higher currents. But it is coming, folks. There's some trials. There's some experimental roads being put in place. Israel comes to mind as one of them. And it will eventually be commercialized. And we'll get rid of this necessity to plug yourself in anywhere between solar, which is there all the time when the sun's shining, and inductive coupling in the roads. We may be able to eliminate charge cables within the next decade. We had a question last week, a TikTok question from Sam Ding Wong. He says, can we ask your credentials, like who are you? Well, I'm Pete Gruber. I'm CEO of Gruber Motor Company and other Gruber companies as well. There are actually 5 operating divisions here. And I've been doing this for 40 years. My background, people usually are interested in educational background. You know, what makes you qualified to talk about electronics, that sort of thing. Well, I never went to college. I was excited about electronics ever since I was a kid. I was building Tesla coils up in the attic in my house when I was 12 to 14 years old. And eventually did go get some classes under my belt. But the majority of my experience is on the job. It is work-related. I worked in a radio shop ever since I was in high school. And you got a really good cross-section of repair skills there, because phonographs, tape recorders, television sets, even alarm clocks would come in. And our job was to resolve and repair them. So I honed some skills there. Eventually went into two-way radio repair, which back in the last century was a big thing. We didn't have cell phones, so you had to have a transceiver in your car or commercial vehicle in order to communicate with anyone. And I repaired those, then became a field engineer and repaired the equipment up on mountaintops that actually talked to all of these vehicles, base stations they call them. Big towers up on mountaintops, did that for a few years. And then finally ended up 10 years at a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, which is no longer in existence, really. But at one point, they were the #2 computer manufacturer in the world, right behind IBM. And we were making mainframes. We're talking about computers that fill up entire buildings versus what we have now, a server, you know, in a small closet somewhere. So that's my background and experience, and most recently, Gruber Motor Company. And that stemmed from years of passion about cars, rebuilding cars, muscle cars, Mopars, and eventually migrating into the electrical space. So I wish I could impress you with a PhD, a master's degree, or even a 4-year degree, but it's not going to happen. But at the same time, I do have some expertise.
Yeah, I was going to say, Pete, after 40 years of running business, I think that's a little more valuable than a PhD, in my opinion.
That's what a lot of people say. It's that practical experience that really does mean a lot. We've got another question from YouTube. Darren. Mr. Gruber, great to hear that your surgery went well. For those of you that aren't updated, I had a hernia surgery a week and a half ago, and I was amazed at 71. I bounced back fast. I was up and around the next day and to work the following day. And the only reason I didn't go to work the following day after the surgery was I had to go to Social Security because they didn't believe I was 71, and I had to go show up and prove to them so I could get some additional benefits. So Darren says, my mom recently had surgery and it was a disaster because she didn't take care of herself as she got older. Don't cancel that gym membership. You know, I'm glad you said that, Darren. People often ask, you know, what makes me so active? Well, it's work. It's sacrifice, guys. I exercise every single day. I watch my diet. I eat salads for lunch every day. But I do things, I have vices, but I have them in moderation. I'll have a cigar every couple of weeks, for example. I'll drink beer on a Saturday. But, you know, the rest of the time, I'm a choir boy. And I think that's how you get into the twilight of your years and still have quality of life. I'll tell you a funny story while we're at it, by the way. I shared an office here in one of the buildings with a manager that was about 10 or 15 years older than I was. So he was at that time in his late 70s. And we used to share the office, and the break bell would ring, and at 10 o'clock here and 3 o'clock we have breaks. They're 15-minute breaks, you know, federally mandated, by the way. So I think they get in the way of a good work day, but anyway, I would typically work through mine and have some fruit. And Pete, my partner, also named Pete, would go outside to have a cigarette. And he'd come back up to the office, and I always scolded him about, at his age, indulging in nicotine and going out to have a cigarette rather than doing what I do, which is have some fruit. And you know, he had an interesting comeback, which stuck with me all these years. He said, you know, Pete, what's the point in taking a perfectly healthy body to the grave? And my immediate comeback to that was, well, Pete, maybe it's quality of life. You're not feeling it yet, but, you know. Well, anyway, he ended up dying of heart disease, sadly enough, about 5-10 years ago or so. And so it is true. Gym memberships are important, or get some equipment in your home and do it there. It's far more convenient for me. I get up early in the morning and I don't have to drive anywhere. So thank you for sharing that, Darren, and I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Yeah, sometimes even surgeries don't go well if the body can't handle that kind of intrusive, you know, process. YouTube, the Fox-a-lot. Glad to hear you're doing better. I'm doing fine, thank you. So one of the things I wanted to pop up was, can we get that picture of the Canoo pickup truck?
Yeah, I'm pulling that up right now.
Yeah, I found this one kind of funny. You know, Canoo is an EV manufacturer that's making delivery vehicles, they're vans basically, for, and they're starting to get sold. I think Amazon had begun using them.
Walmart. Yeah, Walmart ordered.
Oh, was it Walmart? Okay, Amazon's using Rivian.
Yeah, so Canoo and Walmart have teamed up, and then Amazon and Rivian have teamed up.
Cool. All right. But, you know, they look like delivery vehicles, so it looks like Canoo decided we want to get into the pickup truck business. And it looks like a pickup truck with a van front on it. But it's great because here we have some more EV producers that are beginning to address certain types of transportation needs. By the way, Canoo is an electric automotive startup from California. For now, they're calling it a pickup truck. Maybe they'll call it something else after this thing matures. But this pickup promises 600 horsepower. and 200 miles of range. Not bad. It's smaller than what's typically found in the mid-size pickup segment, being 2 feet shorter than the Ford Ranger. And Canoo says that its pickup will be offered with a 6 to 8 foot pickup bed, with pre-orders open right now. And production will start sometime in 2024. So for those of you that like that look, you've got another option available for you if you're looking for a pickup truck.
Pete,
Yes.
I've got this pre-ordered.
Do?
I'm looking forward to God willing getting one of these with the full camper setup. Have you seen it with the camper shell and the tent on top?
I haven't, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to pull you up a picture. I won't be able to put it up for everybody else. But
Where is it? I can try and find it.
just go to
It's on
Canoo.com.
their website?
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
their website. Yeah, this thing is super cool. It's one of those things where, like, for me, when I first looked at it, I was like, I'm not so sure about the looks. I don't know if I like it. But as I kept on looking into it and looked at it more and more, I was like, okay.
How much was the pre-order?
$100.
Oh, that's cheap enough.
I think that's the going rate for pretty much all EVs you can reserve. Put $100 down and you're in the list.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tesla moved to that as well with the Cybertruck, but with this new Tesla Roadster, they want $250,000 to be a Founders Edition or $50K. And some
You have
people
to put $50K up front?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you know what people are of course saying is, why put $50K into this car that is being delayed? I'll put it into your stock and I'll double or triple my money. That was of course when Tesla stock was climbing dramatically. So no pun intended, but can you put a Canoo on this thing? That was a joke, guys.
You should be able to. If they don't, if you're not able to put a Canoo on this, I'm going to be severely disappointed.
It would be a fitting accessory that should come with each of the vehicles. Yeah, it looks kind of cool. It looks sort of military in a way to me, but
Well, speaking of the military, Canoo was awarded a contract with the Army.
Really?
Yep. Their claim to fame is their skateboard. So their skateboard is the battery and the steering wheel with the drive and the suspension and everything. You can put anything you want on top of that.
Oh.
Right, and that's what the military is interested in. So they've already contracted with NASA.
Right.
They have Canoos are delivering the astronauts to and from
The shuttle.
the shuttles.
Oh, from the shuttle, yeah.
And the military is looking at the skateboard platform to see what they can put on top of it.
Right.
I'm sure they're going to combine it with their, potentially automated turret systems or some sort of.
That's going to be cool.
Weapons. They
I'm
have to mount
pulling up that
weapons on
image
it.
right now. You should see it in just a second, Pete.
All right. Well, this may be the company that is the first to address the aftermarket need for a crate drivetrain. If they have a fully functioning drivetrain that you can pop a body onto, that may be the solution to a lot of these people that want to take their, vintage cars and get some sort of an electrified drivetrain underneath it. Very cool.
Totally. They also were awarded contracts with King Bee and Zeba. With Zeba, they've purchased 3,000 delivery vehicles, and then King Bee, I'd never heard of them, but they lease out work vehicles. So
Okay.
they're a fleet that leases out to different companies for specific needs, and they're buying a bunch of their delivery vehicles too. So right now, Canoo is looking like so they're going to be focusing on their delivery market, but they've got I think over $1 billion in pre-orders.
Amazing. It doesn't seem like you can do anything wrong in the EV space at this point in time. The adoption rate appears to be growing exponentially, which is wonderful. It's what the planet needs.
Well,
by the way, for those of you that tuned in late here, my co-host Bob, Zane is out today filming a video somewhere, so Bob decided to sit in, and Bob wants you to he wants to show you his autographed picture of Jim Carrey. So that's what he's holding. And for those of you that are again late, that's a infrared picture behind us of Merano, Italy, which is in the northern part of Italy in the Alps, very close to Austria and Germany, and just a beautiful place to vacation. In the last segment we did 2 days ago, Tuesday morning, a YouTuber by the name of Nicker Rudy in Norway, I believe, or in Scandinavia. He is an EV sales rep up there, and we were glad to hear from somebody that actually specialized in selling EVs. He said he sold a Tesla Model S, a 2018 S75D, to the North Pole. And apparently this is in Finland, and it's close enough to the North Pole where they call it the North Pole, but it's a town called Utsjoki, Utsjoki. And the question that we had in the last segment was, how do these EVs fare in extraordinarily cold environments? And the simple answer was, well, you have to detune them a bit because they're going to spend a lot of time keeping the cabin warm and keeping the battery warm. Nico also says that he ordered myself, he says, a Kia EV6 GT, and it can go 162 miles. So pretty good range for that vehicle. And if you're there today on this podcast, Nico, we'd like to hear from you. You know, I was going through some of the advertisements I get, GM or EV related, and I got a GM advertisement, and it said that GM now has a EV helpline online on their website. And which is commendable because, you know, we don't really think of GM as having a lot of EV expertise, but I decided to test this capability. I clicked, the chat function, which is actually a video and chat. And they said, you're in queue and it'll be about a minute. And I thought, yeah, sure, you know, but I'm gonna hang in there. I'm gonna see how long it takes because that'll be part of my presentation this morning. And within less than a minute and a half, a young lady pops up and says, hi, I'm Jerica. How can I help? And, you know, here's our range of products. And she was in a, I suggest you go to the website so you can see this, but they had a bunch of chargers and they had some of their products, of course, displayed on the wall. And she was very helpful. She was willing to answer questions about their products, their function. If you want to see any of this, it is a web link called evlive.gm.com. And if you go there, again, you'll have a live human being. You can leave your camera off or turn it on. You'll have audio and video bi-directional at that point. And you can tell that it's very much live because oftentimes she would want me to look at something and you'd see her hand go into the camera angle pointing at something. I spent about 10 or 15 minutes with her and I was reasonably impressed that the staff there had been coached well, that they had something meaningful to say and they had expertise. So it looks like GM is jumping on the bandwagon and doing something that most of the EV manufacturers, at least that I'm aware of, are not yet doing, which is an online interactive helpline. All right, and their slogan was, your EV questions answered live.
And Pete, do you remember, what was it, maybe a couple months ago now, where I think Biden went on stage and was saying that GM is leading the way?
I remember that clearly. It prompted a video on our end saying, Joe, you've got to get some new script writers. They're completely uninformed. And of course, that was blatantly untrue. But
this does seem like some cool, innovative stuff they're doing, though. That's
it
cool.
does. It does. And with Mary Barra at the helm, maybe she's responsible for some of this.
Yeah.
Thailand is going to officially have a Tesla launch in December of this year, this month. This is already December. Yeah, it's the first. So it looks like Tesla is branching into yet another country. And we'll see how the people in Thailand accept electric vehicles. I'm sure we'll have more to report on that. Got a question from TikTok. Sazzy time. When will Tesla's Cybertruck hit the street? I don't think there's a firm date, although there is one for the semi-truck, and that's this month. There was some discussion about that at the Peterson Auto Museum. CNBC was there, and they interviewed Frank von Holzhausen, who's the lead designer at Tesla. And I think he answered that question. I don't think he gave a firm date. They're careful about that. But There are delays at times, but I think the Cybertruck is imminent. It looks like next year, I think, is going to be, we're going to see some vehicles on the road. We've got YouTube, Nalvers53, and this is probably a question for Richard, who's, I believe, done a bit more research about this. Have you had a chance to see any of the VinFast EVs?
Yeah, so after your question last week, I did a little bit of research on VinFast. This was news to me. We haven't had a chance to see them, and from what I can gather, the difference, what makes them stick out the most is that the battery and the car are almost sold separately. So they're pulling a Christmas toy trick where, you know, battery sold separately type of deal, where you buy the car for a certain amount and you can subscribe to the battery, right, for a lower fee, or you can buy the car outright with the battery. I'm going to throw this up on the screen.
Wait, subscribe to, you pay monthly to have a battery in your car?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's substantially less. So the VF9 with the buying the car with the subscription is $57,500, whereas with the car and the battery it's $76,000. So there's a little under the $19,000 dollar difference. I mean, I think that this is going to help people get into EVs more.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the entry price is reduced for most people, that would that would attract more adoption. Of course, you will pay for it over the long period, but at least you'll be able to, it will potentially meet your budget to move you into an EV. Good stuff.
Totally, and they look like nice cars. I mean,
You see it up there, Pete?
I do, yeah. I see it up there now.
yeah.
Looks like a station wagon. Looks like a Volvo.
It does look like a Volvo. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
From the side, I got a Grand Wagoneer vibes from it.
Cool. VinFast. Okay, well, there's another one to watch, folks. Interesting. Tesla celebrates its 10,000th delivery in Israel. So 10,000 vehicles running around that country. And it was, let's see, I've got some statistics here. They launched sales in early 2021. So what are we talking about? Just shy of 2 years here. So that's pretty impressive. The issues there are, oh, by the way, this is Model 3 and also Model Y now. And they're competing with another EV manufacturer from China, a couple of them, Geely and MG. But otherwise, Tesla has been amongst the, let me expand this a bit, there we go, amongst the best-selling EV in that country. Now, here's an interesting statistic. With import taxes in Israel that vary from 50 to 92%, can you imagine that? You buy a $100,000 car and you've got to spend 50 grand minimum to get that car actually functioning or delivered to you. Up to 92%, and that depends on citizenship status. So apparently if you're not an Israeli citizen, it gets even higher. But the government definitely is not encouraging EV adoption with those kinds of adders and surcharges. So they say that foreign manufacturers are definitely at a disadvantage. I'm not sure that any major EV manufacturers currently have their sights set on Israel as a production facility or putting a gigafactory there. I just don't know if the market is large enough for that kind of a investment.
Well, the good thing is, wouldn't they have sole control over the market, apparently, if nobody else is willing to do imports there?
Yeah.
Build a factory there and you kind of own the whole market, even if it's small.
So you would grab that entire 10,000 sales in 2 years, which may also not be enough, of course.
Yeah.
But commendable that it looks like Israel is on board. We're seeing EVs in Israel. You know, I was watching the Franz von Holzhausen interview with CNBC the other day, and there were a couple of things that stood out to me. He was talking about the early days at Tesla when they were wondering whether they're going to be able to keep the doors open, and then were they going to be successful with the Model S? Will people buy those? Will there be adoption? And he said, you know what is so heartwarming now is you can drive down most streets in the U.S. and you see a lot of Teslas. And that is very true. They're timeless machines, basically. So anyway, we have a question. TikTok, Petra. Hello, Petra, you're back. Raj. Something is wrong with the Model Y rear motor, especially those made in Shanghai. I'm not aware of any production issues that they're having in China with the Model Y rear motor. Be interesting to get some more information about that and why it would be unique to a particular manufacturing plant. We have a hi from Instagram, Ferris Moreira. Hello, how are you? And by the way, guys, when you greet us, let us know where you are. We're always amazed at the various parts of the world that people come in to our podcast from. This truly is a global type podcast or capability with the information age where we are right now. TikTok, Technus_ski. I saw wall chargers available at Best Buy. Really? Okay. It looks like the Chinese supply chain is beginning to infiltrate some of the retailers, which is great. We need more of that. And Darren N. from YouTube, he says, today is apparently the release date for the Tesla Semi. So we'll have to keep an eye on the newsreels and see what's going on there.
Yeah, I know they're supposed to deliver a bunch.
Yeah.
Pepsi.
Yeah, Pepsi's the first to get them in wide use. I was talking with Victor yesterday, and I was showing Brian a video of the Tesla Semi that we saw at Peterson Automotive Museum, and I was like, Victor, are you ready to start working on these? They're about to start coming in. And he was like, man, I am not ready for that.
You know, Victor's our service manager at Gruber Motor Company. One other design consideration, by the way, when we built this new building, or we retrofitted the building that we converted into Gruber Motor Company, we put an intentionally tall entry door in anticipation of working on things like Cybertruck. Wow. And buses and shuttles, you know, anything that's taller than a Model S. So we're ready. We're ready when the manufacturers are to start sending business our way. All right. Tesla has announced a significant expansion of its supercharger network in Los Angeles. You hear a lot of complaints about long wait times and such. They're going to be putting in an additional 200 supercharger version 3 stalls coming to this market. By the way, let me clarify something. There's some confusion here I've noticed with the articles I've been reading. There are two definitions with supercharger or chargers. A station is a cluster of stalls. A stall is an individual charging station. So what they're putting in is 200 stalls, not 200 stations. I'm not sure they have that many even in the LA area or anywhere near that. The total, by the way, at the end of last year, Tesla had over 15,000 superchargers installed in 1,700 locations around the world. Today, a year later, roughly a year later, Tesla has 1,971 supercharger stations with 17,500 superchargers, which means a new station was put in almost every day this year so far. Pretty decent expansion. Now, this is all over the world, of course. TikTok, Chansey says, there are 5 Teslas on my short street. Yeah, isn't that amazing? You know, you go back 10 years and you'd be hard-pressed to find any Tesla, and if you did, it was a Tesla Roadster, and people would cluster around the car and say, what is this? TikTok, Retroactive 0214. Utah is loaded with Teslas. You see dozens per hour. You know, that's very true. My son and I flew to Fremont 2 years ago to meet with Tesla Corporate. And from the airport, we were watching the number of Teslas. And you couldn't go to a stoplight without having at least 1 or 2 in that intersection. As you're driving down the street, we counted every minute you saw another Tesla. Now, this was 2 years ago. I can only imagine what it's like now. And then you have the other EVs. which you know, are definitely, for me at least, harder to spot. But yeah, the EV adoption is definitely well underway.
Well, I just saw actually on Twitter, Elon was congratulating Ford because they just sold out their 150,000th or produced the 150,000th Mach-E rolled off the assembly line.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of EVs out there these days.
So he was giving Ford credit. Well, you can tell that this industry is not adversarial and acrimonious. There is definitely a lot of support.
Well, I mean, yeah,
this cause.
contrary to popular belief, especially with what's going on with Twitter, Elon actually is in it to change the world. He's not. I mean, he's obviously in it for money. He's the richest man alive, but he's in it to actually cause significant disruption and change too.
Very true. Very true. And you know, it's easier done when the demand far outweighs your ability to supply. I think when competitors get a bit antsy is when they're not seeing the market share to keep operations running, and you know, you can get pretty nervous as a business owner when your cost revenue spreadsheet is out of balance. All right, question from TikTok. 3kmac. You guys have serviced my Model S for 5 years. It's a 2014 85. Still charges the 241 miles. Current miles on his car is 105,659. Outstanding. Well, thank you for the business, sir. And we will be here for you. YouTube, Darren N. It's interesting to see the electric car transition. People living in 2080 will look back at this like we look back at cars replacing horse and buggy. Very true. What's so cool about technology, it's an exponential increase and improvement. Very few things on the planet operate that way, but technology definitely is continuing to evolve more rapidly than we expected to. For those of you that aren't familiar with that concept, if you're fairly young, those of us that have been around for many years, we could not imagine the types of things that we're seeing today. You know, cell phones, for example, where you can actually do FaceTime and talk to people with a little handheld device. I remember in the 70s, in the last century, Dick Tracy comics used to suggest that, and we all thought that was way too unreal. You know, how can that possibly happen? All right, I've got an article here from the Wall Street Journal, and it looks like Elon Musk is back in the news, his boring company. Apparently in Ontario, California, a proposal from Elon Musk's tunnel building venture arrived in January of 2020. To the local transportation authority, it felt like finding Willy Wonka's golden ticket, they say. They started planning for street-level rail connection between the booming Ontario International Airport and commuter train station 4 miles away, with an estimated cost north of $1 billion. So what ended up happening, though, is apparently the interest that the Boring Company has expressed in doing these kinds of installations and conversions is not being met with the kind of responses that these municipalities are expecting. In fact, in this particular article, they're claiming that the Boring Company went dark on them and is not responding. So looks like these types of partnerships are going to be a two-way street, and in order for this to happen, we're going to have the Boring Company actually go front and center, not go underground, and continue to work with these municipalities, or at least give them a reason as to why they're not pursuing it. According to the Wall Street Journal, guys, and I'm a firm believer in you get one side of a story, there's definitely another side of the story. And unfortunately, today's media focuses on only one and considers that to be the gospel truth. So if Tesla comes out or the Boring Company comes out with any additional information, we'll certainly report it. Looks like we have a TikTok question from Technoski. I have a 2016 Model S 75D October build, and he has Michelin MXM4 tires with 60,000 miles on them. Okay, cool.
There's a follow up to that.
There is. Okay.
You see that?
Coming later?
It's right there in the middle.
Okay. He says he can't understand why people need tires every 30,000. Maybe it's a lead foot? Question mark, question mark? Well, all right, I'm going to fall on the sword here and admit something. When I first got my Tesla Roadster, guys, it has not a gas pedal, but an accelerator pedal. And the car literally is so much fun to drive, you really have a hard time keeping your foot off that accelerator. That 0 to 60 in 4 seconds is just so tempting. My first tires lasted less than 8,000 miles, the rear tires. Front tires were fine. I figured the next set I'll be a little bit less aggressive, and they weren't much better, actually. One of the things that happens with EVs as well is you're going to be wearing tires forward and backward with regenerative braking. But you're right, driving habits have a lot to do with how long your tires last, and of course the quality of the tires. You know, you can get a tire at Walmart for $112, or you can go with a Continental for $340 or whatever. There is a difference between them. And of course, application. Are they sticky and soft, which gets you better traction? Or are you going with a rock hard? We used to have nylon tires back in the last century, and they were stiff as could be. When you start off in the morning, I had a van that had them. It had a flat spot that wouldn't go away for the first 5 miles or so. All right, TikTok, 3Mac. 12-volt battery still going strong after 60,000 miles. Gruber rocks. Well, thank you. Our Tesla Model S batteries, by the way, are a improved version of the original C and D AGM absorbent glass mat battery. And they're also fresh because we do volume. We bring in batteries constantly. And that makes a huge difference. Some of these batteries, you know, they sit on the shelves for way too long. If you go to your local AutoZone, you have no idea how long that battery's been sitting on the shelf, aging. Peter Rustino from YouTube, like the VW Beetle in the 60s, I can't believe that they think ICE engines will be done by 2035. Pie in the sky. There's room for everybody. Well, Peter, that may be the case. There's room for everybody, but there's a problem with that. By 2035, a lot of countries and states in the United States have mandated the end of internal combustion engine sales or manufacturing. As this planet continues to go haywire with crazy hurricanes and weather anomalies and droughts and fires, eventually, I think legislation is going to be placed on the books that's going to prevent ICE vehicles from even being on the road. Now, everyone shudders when we hear that because I'm a car guy. I appreciate both ICE vehicles and EVs, and I'd hate to have that muscle car, no longer be able to enjoy that on the road. Have to take it to a private racetrack when that happens. But it is inevitable, my friend, and prepare yourself. ICE vehicles are going away, and they're going to go away more rapidly if this planet continues to hiccup and complain. TikTok, Chansey, do you have a concern with current battery packs aging 10 years from now? My answer to that is the Tesla Roadster, which was really the first mass cell, cylindrical cell EV battery pack, lithium ion, is our best barometer how long these batteries are going to last. They ended up using that same technology Tesla did in their Model S. Instead of making it in a giant 1,000-pound cube, they flattened it out and made the entire floorboard a mass cell lithium ion 18650 cylindrical cell battery pack. The Roadsters have been around since 2008. They're still going strong, except for anomalies where people have bricked their cars. They haven't charged them properly. A lot of these original Tesla Roadsters still have original battery packs and are still functioning 14 years later. J.B. Straubel freely admits the design life of the Roadster battery pack was 10 years. He has 2 of them, by the way. And he says, I'm pleasantly surprised that I've got 14 years on my first Roadster. By the way, his Roadster was a test mule, an engineering prototype, and it has the oldest ESS pack, which is what they call the Roadster battery pack, energy storage system. in existence. He has the first one in his Roadster. And when I spoke to him fall of this year, it was still going strong. So the bottom line is we don't know how long these battery packs are going to last, but we do predict that there will be a mass cell failure at some point in time. They can't go on forever. All right, TikTok. Chansey, we've got another question. Twitter is not true Web3, which was his original goal. What does Web3 mean, guys?
Web3 is the concept of the next iteration of the internet. It's like having things decentralized, kind of like cryptocurrency, and it's basically the next wave of web technologies, where things are decentralized and owned by the general populace, pretty much.
Okay. And so he's saying that it was his original goal. Now, this is Elon's goal, I'm assuming, not the founders of Twitter. We don't know for sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah, not exactly sure. We'll have to see how he morphs it into a different app.
Okay. We've got a TikTok question from user, followed with about 15 numbers. I won't bore you and read all those. He says, back again, LOL. He says, Model S still pulls hard left during acceleration, goes right during regen. You said loose rear toe links. Very frustrating. With hands-off hard acceleration, strong pull to the left. We've got a job coming in this week, I believe, to do aftermarket toe links and suspension on a Model X, so that there is some adjustability with camber on the rears, so the tires don't wear as badly. We'll take a look at that and see if that might be a solution for you. Of course, there is a core problem here that it appears that no one has uncovered yet, and that would probably be the best solution. All right. I have an article here that I found about J.B. Straubel. We just talked to him a moment ago. And they interviewed his mom, apparently, Carol Straubel. And she said that when her 14-year-old son was rebuilding an old electric golf cart in 1989, she found herself driving the boy from town to town in Wisconsin, sometimes as far as 50 miles in search of batteries, tires, and electric motors. So it looks like his interest in things EV related started fairly early. He was passionate, she says. He even wrote the manufacturers for information. He worked on it every day, all day long, all evening long, until he got it to run. Well, congratulations, JB. But JB, of course, went on to do much greater things since then. What his mom didn't know back then, they're saying, was that he would be in the EV business 20 years later. And JB was actually the chief technology officer at Tesla for 14 years. He ended up leaving, and I'll get into that in a moment here. But at the time that he was there, he was instrumental in the design of the Roadster and some of the problems that they had with the Roadster. But you know what I get from JB is, like with Elon, who often speaks about this, these guys are passionate about something much greater than just making an EV or fixing a golf cart. They're interested in healing the planet. They're interested in changing the world. They're interested in changing the transportation paradigm and getting rid of the fossil fuel burners and taking us to a much more sustainable use of energy. By the way, JB stands for Jeffrey Bryan. And his father's car, his father's name is also Jeffrey, by the way, doesn't go by JB. His Roadster is in our shop right now. And yes, JB's dad owns a Roadster. It came here about 2-3 months ago or so. The battery went dead, and it is on a island off Lake Michigan in Door County. We had a heck of a time getting it here because of just transportation issues trying to get the car off of that island. But it looks like JB early on had a bigger vision. And his mom said, you know, finding that rusty 30-year-old golf cart in Egg Harbor, Wisconsin junkyard 20 years ago. And since then, his trajectory has been the world of engineering. In junior high school, he built a working hovercraft for a science fair project. Then another time, he commandeered his family leaf blower to construct a blow furnace to melt some aluminum. Sounds like a typical engineering project, doesn't it? His mom says, JB was born to be an engineer. He's always been passionate about anything that had wheels and required engineering. Well, JB did leave Tesla after many years, their 14 years, highly successful career, to start a company called Redwood Materials, which specializes in recycling lithium-ion batteries. Again, you have to remember, guys like JB and Elon, they're visionaries. They see beyond what we're looking at. And of course, the future is all of these lithium-ion packs that are in EVs are going to have to be dealt with somehow, and they can't go in landfills. So Redwood Materials' mission is to recycle them. And they, in fact, in one of our earlier podcasts, we pointed out that they have achieved a zero waste stream at this point. So everything gets recycled that comes in. And there's a lot of stuff in a lithium-ion battery, from cobalt, aluminum, to stainless steel, and of course the lithium itself. Interesting story about JB, and anyway, for those of you interested, I would suggest you Google Redwood Materials. There's another plant that is being built now, which JB is also involved in. And I find it heartwarming that oftentimes these kinds of passions have their seeds and roots very early in life. YouTube, Darren N. Do you know anything about the CATL battery that lasts 1,000 kilometers? I do not. But I do know that there are a lot of companies working on new technology for batteries, and we're anxiously waiting for something to go into production at this point. Instagram from 9K2JW. Good morning from Kuwait, Mr. Gruber. It's Anwar. How are you, Anwar? And welcome. TikTok, Technoski. On my Model S, I have lots of dust on the inner glass in front of the triple cam. Any easy way to clean? I don't know. On the inner glass in front of the triple cam. I don't know where that is, Technos. Give us a bit more information if you would. And Mustang on TikTok, Mustang $33. He says, I'm looking like Will Smith in Hancock. Well, thank you. Or Will Smith is looking like me. By the way, for those of you coming in late, I want to reintroduce Bob. He is joining us this morning because Zane is doing a video. And Bob is my co-host today. And what he's showing off here is an autographed picture of Jim Carrey.
Do you want to show that picture to TikTok if you can?
Sure.
Bob's going to have to release it, though.
All right, Bob.
See if he's okay with that.
I'm going to give it right back, all right? Can you see that, TikTok? By the way, Jim apparently is taking a hiatus from acting, I heard, on one of the talk shows or something. You guys hear anything about that? I mean, there's an enormous amount of talent there. I would hate to see that, you know, no longer...
I didn't hear about that. He did just do a couple of Sonic the Hedgehog movies that got really, really good reviews, but I did not watch either of those. Haven't seen some of his stuff in a while.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, the gentleman with the pulling left issue, I think he wants clarification on your statement of there being a core problem that we have yet to get to.
Oh, okay. Well, the clarification there is that the toe link on the rear on a Model X is not adjustable. And so the camber is factory set, and it tends to wear the tires more than some people are comfortable with.
Okay, and that could be to blame for pulling the vehicle.
Not pulling, but wearing tires. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So what we're going to do with this particular car, we've done this before. We actually put in an aftermarket, made by Intuitive, by the way, an aftermarket suspension system that gives the owner enormous control over things like camber and toe link adjustments, and of course the alignment shops, whoever they end up using. Okay.
And we are at 55 minutes, Pete.
55 minutes, okay. You know what? I had another segment here for you guys, and I'm changing computers this morning, a long story short, but there is a car from 1937 that I fell in love with, and I'm going to bring that to the next podcast. It is a car that is way ahead of its time. I mean, we're talking about an aerodynamic design that is, you know, before wind tunnels even. And some rivalries back at the time. The company that made this actually morphed into Audi. And that was another fascinating thing for me, that, you know, some of these incumbent auto manufacturers have been around for, you know, almost a century. Very cool stuff, though. Very cool design. Tragic ending. They only built 2, ended up flipping it on the Autobahn. The test driver got killed. But this thing had a 6-liter engine in it in 1937, 16-cylinder engine. So I'm going to bring all that information to the next podcast, and if you're a car person, this thing has curves that just won't stop. Looks like we've got a couple more questions we can entertain before we close here. User with the 15 numbers after it, thank you, 74383. All right, that's what he would prefer to be called. Or not? Did you guys just not type the whole thing? All right, never mind. I didn't type the whole thing.
No, it for some reason when copying and pasting it from TikTok, it'll insert random numbers every now and
Gotcha.
then.
By the way this works here is I don't see the actual questions on the streaming platforms because oftentimes they are cell phones and you know, small screens. So they're being retyped on a large screen that I'm able to read in front of me here, and that's how I'm able to paraphrase a lot of this. And sometimes there's a typo in there and or a blooper. So, but in this case, he says, user with the 15 numbers, thank you. Any thoughts what could cause the pull to the left? Again, thank you. No, at this point there isn't. You know, if we got the car here, it would be a different story. So let us know where you're located. If you're close, bring it by. Instagram, Koki007. Hey guys, how are you? All right. So we always appreciate you guys joining our podcast. We are streaming on a number of platforms. The next one will be Tuesday next week at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. These are broadcast Tuesdays and Thursdays. And in between, we squeeze in videos. So keep an eye on our YouTube channel because there's some cool stuff that's being posted there. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pete Gruber. Thank you, social media team. We'll see you next week.